Welcome to the Broncos Source Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Broncos Source Podcast. My name is Steven with the two awesome co-hosts. We got Jack and we got Adam in the house. How you guys doing?
How's it going? Good.
Doing
How are you
great,
tonight?
man.
Doing good. I'm excited. And again, this is our very first Broncos podcast. This is something that we've been looking to do for a while. I've been looking to do for a while. Started Broncos Source a few years back when Teddy Bridgewater was our quarterback behind center. And this was something that I've always wanted to do. Again, I've been a Broncos fan since, Jay Cutler days. And I remember watching him. And unfortunately, he got moved to Chicago. That broke my heart. It was right around the same time Matt Holliday, my favorite play on the Rockies, got traded to Oakland. And it was a very sad time for me. But you know what? I love Broncos football. It's arguably right after the Rockies. This is my most favorite team of all time. I love the Broncos, and it hasn't been easy over the last several years to be a Broncos fan. But we'll talk about it throughout this year. But I feel like there's definitely some hope on the horizon with Bo Nix as our quarterback. He looked good today, a lot better than the first couple weeks of the season. And Sean Payton, you can talk about how some of his play calling hasn't been that great this year and even last year. But, the Broncos, they have a much better head coach than they did previously, and they have a much better quarterback, I think. And talk about Russell Wilson, who is not even starting for Pittsburgh, and they're probably better off without having him start in Pittsburgh. But for me, I'm excited to start this thing. And, I'll hand it off to Adam first to kind of introduce himself and say hello to our viewers.
Awesome. Thank you, Steven. Yeah, my name's Adam. I've been a Broncos fan, I think, since the moment I was born, man. It's in my blood. Live and breathe the Broncos, man. I got a Broncos tattoo. Obviously, you can't see it right now, but you guys will see it at some point during the season. Very excited to be part of this project with Steven. Steven's a good guy, man. Followed him with the Rockies page. So just looking forward to talking a lot of Broncos football with some good guys, man.
I appreciate it. Jack, how about you?
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm a little more of a recent Broncos fan with moving out here and originally being from the South and not really having an NFL team. But actually, first couple of years of college, Bo Nix was my quarterback. So coming out here and having him as the quarterback again and kind of getting to see his growth from the time I missed when he was at Oregon to now has been really fun. And just always love talking football. So it's great to be on here with you guys. And I'm really excited to get to help cover the Broncos.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I looked for guys that were, interested and really passionate about this because we had a number of guys. We had at least, I think, 5 or 6 people looking for this position, covering the Broncos. And again, I kind of moved them over to the Avalanche, the Nuggets with our parent company, 5280 Media. Go follow us on Instagram. But, I saw Adam and I saw Jack. And I'm like, these are two awesome guys that they know the Broncos, they know their stuff. So I'll bring them on board. And so far, I love it. And I can't wait to talk with these guys. And Tom and I, who we do Rockies Now with the Rockies Now podcast. We'll occasionally be on here talking with the guys. So we're excited with the future that we have here at Broncos Source. So to get things going, the Broncos had a somewhat of a big matchup, right? I mean, the Broncos coming into today, they had, I believe, 8 straight losses against the Las Vegas Raiders. This was a streak that had to end. Of course, last year they ended the streak against the Kansas City Chiefs and a big win. And so this was a big game for the Broncos. If you lose, you go down 2-3, which not a good position, especially with the Broncos schedule. It gets a little lighter after this week. You do have the Panthers coming up, I believe, soon, and we know how the Panther season is going out right now. But yeah, this was a big, I think, moral, game for the Broncos that they had to win. Kind of a statement, just say, hey, we're done playing around. We need to make a statement in today's game, and that's what they did today. And at first, I was a little bit worried. Within like 3 plays of the game, the Raiders, they get a touchdown. I'm like, oh boy, here we go again. This is going to be another like blowout game potentially, and the Broncos defense didn't have a good start, and I got really worried. And Bo Nix, he wasn't that bad the first drive. I think we got a first down, but then it really stalled out, and then we had to punt it. But yeah, I mean, the Broncos defense overall, shout out to Pastor Tan, 2 picks today. One of them was a 100-yard pick six. The defense was solid today. I thought it was great. It's been great all season long. The offense it gets better and better. I feel like last week against the Jets, I feel like that was weather related. It was just a bad field. We know MetLife is arguably the worst stadium in football, if not in sports. The grass, the turf, whatever you call it, among the worst in the world. And for Bo Nix to go out there and get 77 yards, I believe, after he was in the negative range going into halftime, and for the Broncos to win that game 10-9 against Aaron Rodgers, who again it's Aaron Rodgers, he's going to be a Hall of Famer, right? So it was a good win last week, and today again, like I said, it was a moral game for the Broncos to try to get a win against the Raiders. Who the Raiders they we know their defense, Max Crosby, who got a couple sacks today. At least 2 or 3 sacks, right? And the Broncos they kicked the butts, right? And it really feels good. And now the Broncos, after losing their first 2 games, they're now 3-2, and their playoff hopes are definitely not out of the question, man. I mean, there's even a possibility they could be a wild card team this year if they can keep this consistency. And like I said, they have somewhat of a weaker schedule up ahead. I mean, they're playing against very winnable teams. It's just that the Broncos can't fall asleep at the wheel and think, okay, everything's solved. We're going to be all right. No, there's still issues with this team that needs to be fixed. I feel like the run game needs to be happening more. Like finally today, we saw some run game from Javonte. He's starting to look a little bit better. McLaughlin, I feel like he should be getting a lot more touches on the ball. He looks very, very good. We finally ran the ball a little bit today. Bo Nix, he's starting to pass. He's starting to get those passes in where at the start of the year he was just throwing every single time. It's just like we need to run the dang ball, right? So today was a good win for the Broncos. Again, final score was 34-18. The most scored points this year for the Broncos. Previously, it was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they scored, I believe, 26. So my first thoughts, I love the win. Great game, and I'm very excited about this Broncos team moving forward because I feel like the Broncos now have that quarterback because I saw it today. Bo Nix, he's that guy. He has that confidence. Those first 2 games, it's so easy to be down and out and just blaming everybody. But no, Bo Nix, he's been able to keep his head up and be positive and fix those mistakes. And again, this is his rookie year, right? And I know, he's had a lot of experience in college, the most starts by a college quarterback, right? But I think that plays into it too. But also today in the NFL, Caleb Williams, he's starting to look good. Jaden Daniels, we know how the Commanders, they're starting to become one of the most exciting teams in the NFL, right? So I think we're seeing these rookie quarterbacks really turn the page here, and I think we're starting to see that with Bo Nix. So overall, I thought it was a great win for the Broncos today.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. Adam, what do you think?
An aspect. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Jack, and then Adam.
Okay. I could not agree more with the Bo Nix stuff. I mean, giving him time is going to be the biggest factor. You're right. He has gotten the most starts, and I know that was kind of college-wise used against him as like, oh, he's an older player. Like, what is the upside here? But it was really because he was forced into that role. So he comes into Auburn in 2019, and first game he ever plays is against a very solid Oregon team, wins it on a very last-second play with, I will say, like Seth Williams still in the NFL, had a great day today, but not a receiver one by any means. So he just giving him the time, I think, is definitely great. And being in the stadium today, seeing all those jerseys of him, that confidence that's going to build in him, I think he's going to end up phenomenal. But the main thing that stood out to me was it really felt like 2 different games in a way, because you have the opening drive, Bowers has that incredible catch that may or may not have been offensive pass interference, but that's besides the point. Go down, they're up, they end up 10-3, and they're driving down the field, and then Pat Surtain just like steals what should have been like a dagger for the Raiders so early on away from them, re-energizes the whole stadium, and it really felt like that just turned everything in that game on its head. Prior to that, the Raiders, I mean, they were just running the ball straight down the middle, even without Zamir White, their RB1. You had Amir Abdullah and Alexander Madison just making the defensive line look silly in so many ways. And after that, you started seeing like actually stuffing the middle, making the Raiders really have to work to put points on the board. And that allowed Bo and that offense to just free it up so much more. You stop seeing as much of the screens. You stop seeing as much of the pure run game. And though Troy Franklin unfortunately dropped that 45-yard pass,
Should have been a
which led
touchdown.
to the little bit
Yeah.
of conflict between Sean and Bo.
Yeah.
Just seeing that part of the playbook start to open up where we haven't really gotten to see that outside of maybe a little bit in Tampa Bay, that's really fun because I do think Bo is much more than your screen pass, your slant, your just like kind of check down merchant that he kind of got claimed to be while at Oregon given their scheme. Because he can clearly deliver the deep ball, and I think with just a little more time, Troy Franklin kind of gets to the point of making that catch more consistently, or maybe it's somebody more along the lines of Sutton or Reynolds or anybody with a little more experience in that position where I'm sure they make that catch.
Yeah, I saw the replay, and I'm like, because I told Adam before we started, but I went up to the national park today, and I was out of service. But when I came home and I saw the highlight, I'm like, Franklin's got to make that catch, and he made a really good catch early in the game too. I mean, I think it was
A
early in the, I think
little
the third.
behind him.
Yeah, it was behind him, and he made a nice catch. But yeah, I mean, if Franklin catches that, that's one of the best plays of the year for the Broncos, I think. And it was a
Without a
really good
doubt.
pass. I mean, it was a beauty. It was just like, oh, he should have had it. But again, I'm excited for that connection of Franklin and Nix, like you said, goes back to Oregon. And I think that was an underrated pick. And I'm not worried about Franklin. Again, he's a rookie. It happens. I know a lot of people are giving some heat to Franklin that, oh, he's Judy 2.0. It's just like, let him develop, let him grow. And but yeah, I mean, you could argue and say Bo Nix almost had 4 touchdown passes today, and he had over 200 yards, and I think that's definitely an improvement. I know to start the year, it just like, especially in that fourth quarter in Seattle, you're going up against arguably one of the best defenses they've had in a long time. Going back to Legion of Doom, right? And then you go to take on the Steelers, who their defense has been elite all season long, right? We have T.J. Watt, who made an incredible sack of Bo Nix by just touching his ankle, and boom, Bo Nix falls down. We saw a little bit of that today with Max Crosby, just barely touched Bo Nix's knee, and Bo Nix just falls flat. I mean, it's just crazy, and it just goes to show you that Bo Nix, he's that guy, I think, and going up against all these defenses to start your career, that's not an easy job, man. I mean, got to give credit to where it's due. But yeah, I thought I thought that Troy Franklin should have come down with that ball, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But still, it's whenever you score 34 points on the board against a Raiders defense, who is, of course, their organization, not the greatest ownership and front office, but they do have a decent head coach, and they do have decent pieces on that team, especially defensively. So you got to say, hey, this was a really good win on both sides for the Broncos offensively and defensively. And now just focus on next week. Adam, what was your thoughts on the game?
For sure. Well, first and foremost, just seeing the Broncos in those uniforms, man, that was such a treat, man. We haven't seen those since 1996, right?
Yeah. Something like that.
So, I mean, it's been a long time. And I feel like the biggest thing for me when it comes to the Broncos under Sean Payton is the teams under Fangio and Joseph, they don't win games like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, look at that. That's just
it looks
so
beautiful,
clean.
man.
Yeah.
But they just, to your point, what we were talking about before the going live here, they have a different head coach here, and he knows how to win. And I just feel like this team has a lot of resolve. Those Fangio teams, those Joseph teams, if they go down 10-0, we know they're going to lose the game. And it was just like they didn't have any fight in them, and I feel like just watching this Broncos team make the biggest play of the season with the Surtain pick six, with the game pretty much on the line at that point, because the Raiders were just doing whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
Right. And the Broncos needed a play, and they made a play, and it was just really nice to see. The big thing for me on offense is we're still not running the ball enough. We've got 19 carries between the two running backs for like 83 yards. 83 yards is good, but I'd like to see the Broncos somewhere between that 22 to 25 carry range to take a little bit more off Bo Nix. I feel like Sean Payton. Sean Payton and I disagree on a lot of things, but he's the head coach,
Yeah.
But I feel like Sean Payton really sometimes wants to showcase his first round pick. And he's going to say, you know what, I'm going to win with this guy. I can do this. He can carry this offense. And it's like, you know what, sometimes, Sean, we got to just ease him into the offense a little bit, a little bit too much of depending on Bo. And when you go up against a pass rush like Las Vegas has, you're asking for trouble, although the Broncos did their best, obviously outside of Crosby, because that guy always plays like Lawrence Taylor against us, like he's just a dominant force against the Broncos. But, I just feel like the offense is missing a few things. Bo's doing his best without those things. Like I feel like a rookie quarterback's best friend would be a tight end. And we just utilize the tight end almost not at all in this offense.
Yeah.
It was nice to see Kroll get activated and Dulcich, being inactive to try and get some spark in that room. But we didn't use Kroll at all. So I would have liked to have seen that. But I think overall, to your point, Steven, winning against the Raiders for the first time in 8 games is a huge, huge thing that comes off the Broncos' backs, off their shoulders, whatever you want to say. It felt at the beginning like, hey, here we go again. The Raiders, they just look like the best team on the planet against the Broncos for some reason, but they found a way, and it was great to see, man. Good win.
Yeah, and the Broncos, this is, we'll say this too, that the Broncos, they still have struggled this year in the last couple of years of stopping the run. That's one thing that they have really struggled with. They're excellent in the secondary, right? By stopping the pass. That's one thing the Broncos, we don't have to worry about. Now, again, like to start the game, like the first 3 plays, we had that missed tackle where they scored the touchdown, right? And I forget the receiver's name for Vegas.
Brock Bowers.
Yeah, Bowers. Yeah, like that was just a missed tackle, bad play, bad defense there. And see, that's very rare to see. It's just like, when was the last time I saw that? Because I feel like it's locked down with PS2 or Riley Moss, who's been playing lights out this year. I love Riley Moss. He's one of the he's so good. It was an excellent draft pick. And also shout out to Jonah Ellis, man. He's been like he's playing like a veteran, and this is his first year, right? In his first few games, right? But yeah, like it was so weird to see that. But yeah, the Broncos, they need to stop the run, right? And the Raiders, they're of course they're not going to be passing this much, and especially if Adams and heck, maybe even Crosby. There's rumors about Crosby. They're going out in a trade potentially. The Raiders, they're at that time where they're probably going to trade those guys, right? And they're going to
miss him.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, as Broncos fans, I mean, I do think that if Adams did play today, a lot of a much closer game today, because Adams is just elite. But at the same time, though, you do have PS2 has been playing. Secretly, he's been one of the best, if not the best, corner in the league, right? So I still think the Broncos come away with the win, even if Adams is playing. It was just that's how good the Broncos were today. But yeah, I agree with Adams that we got to stop the run, man, because if they don't stop the run, you're going to lose you can lose a football game. That can lose you a game. And we saw that a lot last year. I remember the Commanders. Remember last year when they had Sam Howell, who could, he was running. He couldn't pass, but he could run. And he killed us when in the run game. And we should have won that Commanders game, and yet we lost. And the Commanders weren't that good last year. It was just an embarrassing the first few games, especially against Miami. And I know, that's when they had a healthy roster and a healthy Tua, but like we couldn't stop anything. And of course that was, they had some passes in there, but like the run game was just horrible. Like we couldn't stop the run. So if the Broncos are going to continue this win streak and make the playoffs this year, they got to stop the run. They got to be better at that. And will they fix that? I don't know. We'll see. Maybe not. But, as long as they can close down the secondary, I think we have a good chance. We just got to stop that run. And unfortunately, with Alex Singleton, with him out, that's a huge blow, because he's one of the best, defensive players in the league. But again, we do have depth pieces there, which I feel like a lot of people said during the preseason. The Broncos have really good depth. It's just that you just hope that they can stay healthy. So that's one thing to watch out for. But yeah, I think the defense has been great. Vance Joseph, he's been doing an incredible job since that Miami game. And again, I was a little bit worried that we were going to have one of those blowout losses today. But again, the Broncos, they played well defensively. And I think the offense is going to come around, and we saw really good offense, in the preseason. And of course, we saw a little bit of Bo Nix in that, but and you do look at the quarterbacks that are under Bo Nix. They're, I think I would probably put Wilson and then Stidham, in that order. I
Agreed.
think Wilson, he just had bad coaching in New York, man. I feel bad for him, and I think he could definitely be a starter for the Dolphins for all I know. And there's even rumors about him getting traded. I think that could happen. But if I'm the Broncos, I'd actually rather trade Stidham than Wilson, and I think Stidham could definitely help somebody out. I mean, he won, I think, 2 games for the Raiders before he came to the Broncos, right? And I think he almost maybe he went 1-1, but I know he got a win. It might have been against the 49ers, but Stidham, he's definitely a good backup quarterback. But I think if I had to pick a quarterback, I'd definitely go Wilson over Stidham. So the Broncos have depth, man, and it's just that as long as the Broncos can stay healthy, which is always the question in football, this Broncos team could definitely be a postseason team. It's just that they gotta click, right, and things gotta click, and so far they're clicking right now. And I think, again, one thing that's been really promising to see, and that's the benefits of drafting a young quarterback, is seeing Bo Nix, run, get out of the pocket quickly, and he's a quick snapper. He gets rid of the ball very quickly. Where Russell Wilson, he would hang on to the football forever, for an eternity. It's just like, throw the football, and so we don't have to worry about that anymore. So again, it's very promising, very exciting to see Bo Nix finally, being that guy. And again, he's been playing good football since week 3. And arguably, I mean, again, week 2 was just horrendous, but Bo Nix, again, it's rookie growing pains, kind of like in any sport. You're going to have growing pains, especially like in baseball. You're going to have those growing pains, but that's why you play them. Let them develop and grow. That's how they grow, because you can't, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, because I know a lot of big media people who hate the Broncos were like, oh, they got to bench Bo Nix, they got to start Zach Wilson or Jarrett Stidham. It's just like, no, that's not how you do it. So I'm happy the Broncos committed to Bo Nix, and now he's the guy. So I'm excited for that. So I forget, who are the Broncos playing next week?
Chargers, their run
Oh.
defense is going to get tested next week, sir.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, they got
Yep.
was it Dobbins from the Ravens?
Dobbins.
Yeah,
Yep.
and he's going to be a scary guy to deal with. Of course, I feel like Harbaugh, he's now implemented the run game more than ever into the Chargers, and I think that's kind of clicked.
Yep.
And where now the wide receivers, they basically have no wide receivers. They're just blocking wide receivers. So now it's all about the run, and that's the thing. But at the same time, the Broncos, they can't fall asleep in the the wide receiver position. They got to block. They got to have good corners. I know the Broncos do. So I feel like the Broncos, the task should be a little bit easier. Now all you have to do is just focus on the run. But still, like I said, don't want to fall asleep, because Justin Herbert, he's a good quarterback. He can sling the football. But I think if you give me the Chargers offense run game versus the Broncos defense, I think it's going to be a good game next week. I think the Broncos, in my opinion, are the favorites to win that game. It's just that you just can't let the run game get away. And again, the Broncos have struggled with the run. That makes me a little bit nervous, though, for next week. So they cannot allow that.
I think the Raiders kind of exposed a couple things on the defense for the Broncos today where they can be had a little bit. When the Broncos play defense, they go a lot of man coverage. And when you do a lot of man coverage, it's hard to keep accountability for the quarterback. So this is going to be a problem when you face like Lamar and some quarterbacks like that, because you're playing a lot of man coverage. There's nobody really watching the quarterback. And I think a lot of teams are going to start spreading the Broncos out and playing them in man and running the football against them, which is why when they play the Chiefs, which it's always a great matchup when we play the Chiefs, we always play them so well on defense. The Broncos are going to get tested for sure against teams like that. And I think that when it comes to playing somebody like a Lamar Jackson, you're going to see a lot more zones from the Broncos, because you can't let Lamar just run crazy. Although the Broncos trust their corners, all 3 of them, because they're all outstanding. I think what a lot of teams are going to try to do is also try to throw deep balls on the Broncos. They're going to try and throw the ball downfield, which the Raiders tried quite a bit today. And not to say that teams are going to succeed in doing that, but I feel like teams are going to do that, especially when the Broncos bring as much pressure as they do. I believe the Broncos have the #1 blitz rate in the entire NFL. So something to watch out for. The Broncos, live by the sword, die by the sword kind of thing. You're going to blitz a lot. You're going to get burned sometimes. That happens. But I love the way that Vance Joseph is cooking on defense, man. Outstanding.
Yeah. What about you, Jack?
So yeah, I mean, defensively, like I had pointed out, like the kind of shift that we saw around really kind of focusing on the run game and telling them, Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, you're gonna have to beat our secondary. You're gonna have to make these throws where Riley Moss can go up and make that incredible first interception of his career that he had, or Patrick Surtain. The second pick was just unreal.
Yeah.
But one thing I noticed with the secondary, and kind of a reason I feel like they can trust so much in blitzing, is these guys have so much field awareness, in the sense of like you're seeing this ball go and you're like, that's a ball that could get picked off, and they're turning around, they're making the play. There was some silly like PI calls. I mean, there always are going to be. It's the NFL, and there were some that were probably good plays. But for the most part, the balls that these guys had a real chance at, they were making plays on, whether that was the 3 interceptions that really were pivotal in not only turning this game around, but just like forcefully keeping the momentum, even when the offense wasn't necessarily driving down the field every time, to even just making good pass deflections, coverage sacks. Just everything seemed very difficult for the Raiders, especially post pick 6. And I think that really just kind of allowed Peyton and Bo to just kind of cook on offense, to get some flow. I mean, that last touchdown to Josh Reynolds was a beautiful ball, and you could just tell Bo was playing free and fast and fun. And I think that the defense and the success that they were having was just pivotal in that. So I'd love to see Vance Joseph continue to cook, as you had mentioned, Adam. And I think that will lead to a lot of success, in the sense of allowing us to uncork the deep ball, allowing us to utilize the run game more. This is the best I've seen Javonte look all year so far. And I think it is just because the offense got to play so much more free.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, Jack. And again, it's going to be really important that, again, focusing on stopping the run against the Chargers, but again, don't fall asleep at the wheel, because they could have a sleeper. I mean, I do think they have a young wide receiver, but really the Chargers, and that's the nice thing too. I feel like if you had a matchup between the Chargers offense and the Broncos offense, I would argue say the Broncos offense is better. But if you look at the run, Chargers have a better run than the Broncos do. So it's going to be, I feel like it's going to be, a lot of it's going to be offensive versus offense, on Sunday. But who knows? I think, again, Vance Joseph, he's, like you said, Jack, he's been cooking for the last year, right? And ever since that Dolphins game. And so, yeah, I mean, again, the Broncos, they had a good defense against the Chargers last year. Of course, the Chargers, they had nothing to win for. They were playing Easton Stick because Herbert was out. But, it just, and that's the question too. Like Justin Herbert, man, that's why I don't really trust the Chargers, because what if he gets hurt? I mean, he's had that plantar fasciitis thing that's bugged him for a while. And it's like a very big question. It's just like, you never know. I feel like he's been banged up already several times this year. Every single game, Justin Herbert's always limping or whatever. And so you never know. Now, I'm not saying that we're rooting for Justin Herbert to get hurt, because we don't want any football to get any sort of bad injury, because Justin Herbert's a great player. But in terms of like, wanting to win the football game, you do kind of hope that the Broncos do get after Justin Herbert, get him sacked. And I think he's going to get sacked, because of the Broncos secondary, not the secondary, but the defensive line, right? Benito's having a great year. Like we said, Riley Moss, he's been able to contribute with that as well. Franklin Myers, he's been great since the trade from the Jets.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that was a heck of a trade, and I feel like that was a steal, right? And the Jets, they could use him because they lost again today, right? And so, yeah, I think that was a great acquisition. And so, yeah, and I think if you look at that front line, I think they can't stop the run. It's just that they can't allow these big runs, because there's going to be times, I mean, today we saw it too, like where there were times where the Broncos did stop the run a little bit, where they got like, right to the line, and they had zero, any drive from that. And then there's those drives to where the Raiders, they go 17, 20, 25 yards on the run, and just that they got to stop those big runs from hurting them. And ultimately, and then here's another thing too, is like I feel like the Chargers, their kicker situation, I've heard different things about that. So I don't know, but if I'm thinking about it, I'm going to go for the Broncos for the win here on Sunday, next Sunday. I just feel like the Broncos, they have that momentum, 3 games, in a row, 3 straight wins, and they've been good wins. I mean, they kind of got close last week to losing. I mean, again, they could have lost because if you look at the field goal when Lutz missed the field goal, I'm like, okay, that's the game near midfield. All Aaron Rodgers has to do is throw a little bit of somewhat of a medium pass, right, to either Williams or somebody like that, and they're probably going to get a field goal, and they have a pretty good kicker. But because the field was so bad in bad conditions, they missed the field goal too. And so arguably you could have said that last week could have been a loss against the Jets. And so, I feel like the Broncos have an advantage here again. 3 straight wins. Chargers, they're kind of like the Raiders a little bit, in my opinion. They're kind of like in that rebuild mode. The Chargers, we're still kind of figuring out what they're doing this year. They're definitely not as bad as I thought they were going to be, but I still think the Broncos have an edge over the Chargers on Sunday. So my prediction: Broncos win. So
Yeah, I think something to consider with the Chargers is they're top 5 in defense, in rushing and passing. So that's what's carried them, and they had a chance to beat the Chiefs last week because their defense.
The refs, also the
the refs. But they only gave up 10 points through almost 3.5 quarters. So I feel like we might be in for a defensive slugfest there. And something about Jim Harbaugh's teams, his identity is clear. He's going to run the football and he's going to play good defense. And I think that the Chargers are no different. I don't think the Broncos will take them lightly. I think Sean Payton knows what kind of a head coach Jim Harbaugh is and the success that he's had in the NFL and at the college level, both. But I do think that the Chargers defense is something we should not discount at all, because they're coming in pretty strong. But hey, the Broncos they came into today or right now sitting at 12th in rushing defense, and they're in the top 10 in passing defense. So I feel like the rush defense has been good this year, but to Steven's point, they're giving up the big play a little too often. So a lot of good penetration today against the Raiders and stopping plays at the line of scrimmage or behind. But there were a couple of big plays in there that we need to obviously eliminate.
Yeah. I mean, prediction wise, I certainly agree with both of you. I think it is obviously a very winnable game for the Broncos, especially if you are able to take away J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and even Herbert to an extent, although I don't know that we'll see him run even as much as we saw Gardner Minshew today, just with some of the injuries you had previously mentioned, Stephen. But I also just think we've seen, like in that Chiefs game, we saw kind of the breakout of Ladd McConkey, a guy that is used to high utilization in college and really can be very shifty, especially out of the slot. So with the Broncos secondary, it's just going to be really important that they take these guys just as seriously as they would anybody any other week, especially like how we saw them against the Bucs. I think if we see that version of the Broncos defense and force it to be, even if it is J.K. Dobbins or Gus Edwards, like force that to be how they win. Don't let Herbert use his arm strength. Don't let these receivers like break down the secondary and then allow them to also expose it with the running game. I think we stand a good chance with what we've seen the past couple of weeks, minus the Jets week and kind of the weird stuff with that offensively, that if you limit them to just trying to beat you with the run game, you should have the firepower to kind of outpace them, especially with some of the stuff we saw today of allowing Bo to have a little more freedom in the red zone and the like greater utilization we've seen over the past couple of weeks of McLaughlin and Williams and them kind of coming into form and allowing the whole offense to be much more dynamic.
Yeah, I agree. All right, one question before we start wrapping things up tonight. Who else thinks, and I think you all agree with me, who else agrees that the Broncos should have the throwback uniforms be the main jersey of the entire season?
Oh, man.
Those look so good. And I got to say, at first I was like, you know what, maybe the Broncos are just like too focused on the uniforms instead of playing good
That's
football.
what I thought too, man.
Because it was just like, oh, they were so excited about wearing the jerseys. I was too, but then all of a sudden, just like maybe they're not used to it, and so they're just not like they're just thinking about the uniforms, not actually playing the game of football. Then after a while, just like maybe they're feeling the vibes, and I feel like they had it, but like they're the best jerseys in football, I think, easily by
No
far.
question.
And I'm very, even though I know some of the announcers can sometimes be a little bit cheesy and all that, but I agree with the CBS announcers. They even thought that the jerseys were the best in football. So shout out to those guys that were doing not the CBS, the Fox broadcasters. I forget who they were, but I think
Kevin Kugler and
Kevin
Daryl
Kugler.
Johnson.
Yeah, they like shout out to those two guys because even they think that the Broncos should have those jerseys, to be their regular home jersey. And I think a lot of fans wanted that because I know a lot of people on the Broncos Twitter/X world before the season started wanted these jerseys to be the main jerseys. I did too, because it kind of brings you back to that old school of winning football for the Broncos back in the 70s, late 90s before they switched over to the original kind of like the jerseys that they've been wearing for the last 20 some years, with John Elway when he was winning those Super Bowls. And then of course Peyton came along and all that. But I don't know. Like, of course, that was before my time when they were wearing these jerseys, but just seeing them today, I love them already. And I think come on, Bo Nix in that jersey. I mean, come on. We posted it on our Instagram. He looks so good, man. I think that just, I don't know. You look good, you play good, right? So I think that really accounts to the Broncos today. But I don't know why.
Absolutely.
Like, I think the Broncos they need to listen to the fans, and I think that's what they've been trying to do. Hey, let them wear these jerseys for the rest of the year at home, right? I mean, come on, like they
Yeah, I
have
think
to.
the NFL unfortunately will come in on that because it
Yeah.
counts as an alternate, so you can only wear
Yeah.
alternates 3 times a year. I don't know why, because if the NFL
Yeah.
really cared about what the fans thought, none of that stuff would matter, man. We want to see
Yeah.
cool uniforms, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, who cares about like
Mhm.
the standard protocol of uniforms? Like, we just
Yeah.
want to look good, man. And if we're on
Yeah.
fire with these uniforms, why
Keep wearing
not,
them.
dude?
Yeah, keep wearing them. Yeah, I mean, same
Yeah.
thing goes with baseball too, because again, with our Rockies podcast, we talk all about the time about the Rockies uniforms and how we want the black vest to return, right, and how
Oh
good they
man,
were.
bring back the black
And
vest.
then Nike's like, nope,
Yes.
we're getting rid of all baseball vests. Like the Diamondbacks, they got rid of their old vests. The teal, purple vests, which I think up next to with the Rockies black vests were the best. I think the Arizona's purple colors were great. I thought. I remember the old White Sox vest with the black shirts
Yeah,
and
man.
those were so much really good looking jerseys. I remember the Rockies, they used to have the CR jerseys with the number on the other side.
I
When
got one
Fargo
of
got
those in my closet.
yeah, like dude, like I really that's the one thing I don't like about Nike. Like the City Connects, I like the City Connects. It's just that it's like I wish because again I remember I remember when the NFL used to do what was the original before they went to Nike. It wasn't Riddle, but it was
Reebok?
yeah, Reebok. Yeah, like those
Mm.
were much better jerseys. Even the players have said that the feeling of those jerseys were much better. Where now it's just basically like Velcro, basically, and so it just the jersey quality is not that good. But yeah, I just feel like let the people get what they want, right? And so, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I do like the newer jerseys the Broncos had this year, like the orange jerseys, they look good. I like the blue jerseys. I actually might get a Bo Nix blue jersey, but the throwbacks, man. I mean, with the sky blue and the old retro look today, just
Gorgeous. Gorgeous.
like you said, like Adam just said, it gorgeous. I want that. We want that. Can we please have more of that? And is this going to be the only time they're going to wear, or are they wearing it one more time this year?
They're winning them against the Chiefs too, week 18.
Oh yeah, hey, that could be a playoff implication.
That could be for the division if we're
I
playing
mean,
like this,
again, if the Chiefs lose tomorrow, which I don't know, I know
Good
some people.
chance.
I mean, there's a chance because again, as a Broncos fan, and I know a lot of Broncos fans who are listening to this, either in the future or when this podcast comes out. I know some of us, I've heard of, Brandon Perno. That's Good Sports. I watch him a little bit.
Love him, man.
Yeah, he great content, very, very funny. But he had, his famous curse wheel, and apparently this week landed on the Chiefs. So
I saw that.
I'm hoping it's going to be the Chiefs. So if it happens, the Broncos have a shot. And hey, I mean there's an argument where the Chiefs could be 0-4 this year because
100%.
a bunch of their games have been like down to the final play, and then there's a flag that like turns around for the Chiefs. It's just like, man, the Broncos, they could be right up in the division. I mean, even last year, the Broncos gave the Chiefs, some scares at the end of the season. Of course, that game against the Patriots really killed them, and of course, benching Russell Wilson was a weird situation, even though it was the right decision to make. It's just that, hey, I mean, the Broncos, they're kind of flirting with the Chiefs and say, hey, don't think that this division is going to be easy to take away, because I feel like the Broncos, they're kind of, again, they're on the come up, and I'm excited for what the Broncos have this year. Again, I'm sure there's going to be games where it's going to suck, right? I mean, I'm sure we're going to have a few more losses where we're going to be pulling our hair out like Adam is, and we're going to be miserable, but I'm excited because there's a lot of hope and potential in this Broncos team. It's just that, just got to stay healthy. And I think if we can do that, I think this is a playoff team. And again, at the start of the season, at least for me, I had the ceiling right around, I think 10-7. I think that's achievable. And then the floor was like, I think 6-11. I think the Broncos will be a little bit above that. 6-11 is the absolute worst. And I don't think we'll get to that point as long as Bo is doing his thing and the defense does his thing. I think we'll be fine. Might not make the playoffs, but I think we'll definitely be close. And I think it's definitely going to be that step, kind of like maybe the Houston Texans of last year. And I'm not saying that, Bo Nix is CJ Stroud 2.0, because even CJ Stroud, this is his second year. He's still having those growing pains today. I mean, CJ Stroud, there was a couple times today I was watching the game. You can still see that rookie in him.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I feel like Bo Nix, he's that guy. I think he's our quarterback. So I think Broncos fans, Broncos country, I think we're going to be all right with Bo Nix as our quarterback. It's just that there's a few things that we need to fix. And Adam and Jack pointed out tonight, it's got to be the run game, stopping that run and avoiding those big plays. So that's one thing to watch out for as we move forward into the regular season. So Jack, Adam, welcome aboard. I'm excited for the future. I'm excited for next week as we do our next show right after we do the Chargers and Broncos game. Stay tuned for that one. For those who are listening on Spotify, make sure you follow us on Spotify at Broncos Source Podcast. And if you want to follow us on Instagram, go follow us at Broncos Source on Instagram. We really appreciate it. On behalf of Jack, myself, and Adam, thank you for watching and listening to this edition of the Broncos Source Podcast.
Go Broncos.
Yes, sir.
Go Broncos.